What's up? I'm Kilo Loco, and today we're going to be going over AWS Amplify. Specifically, we're going to be going over Auth. I'm going to show you how to log in, sign up, confirm your account, and log out of your account, all using SwiftUI. So all you're going to need is the AWS Amplify CLI in order to follow along. And if you want to use the projects or see the source code that I'm writing, look at the description for the link and you'll be able to see the repo, the starter project, and the finished project. So let's go ahead and jump right on in. So as you can see, our app is going to start off with a sign up view, and we already have the sign up view built. It's pretty simple. It just consists of a text field for the username, email, password, and then a button for the sign up, as well as another button for login. Confirmation is pretty much the same as well. And the login view is also pretty much the same. Once we sign in, we'll also be able to see a session view, which it's going to simply display a message saying you signed into Amplify, and then it's party time. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to go over to our terminal and we need to actually add Amplify to our project. So open up your terminal. And we're going to be using CocoaPods to get Amplify into our project. So let's do pod init. Once that finishes, if you do ls, you should be able to see that there is a new pod file in your project. Open up the pod file. Once we have our pod file open, the first thing that we need to do is we need to update which platform we're going to be programming for. In this case, I'm going to be using SwiftUI on the latest Xcode beta to use iOS 14. Next thing I want to do is add Amplify as a pod, as well as the Cognito Auth plugin. So let's do that now. Now that I have my two pods in place, let's go ahead and save the file and exit. Now all we have to do is run pod install repo update. Now that we got the dependencies out the way, let's go ahead and run Amplify init using the Amplify CLI. If you don't have the Amplify CLI, make sure you go to this link right here in order to download it. I'm going to go ahead and use all the default information for my project. So my project name will be called Authenticated. I'll be using the dev environment. My personal preference for editors is Vim. And we're going to make sure that we select iOS. I'll go ahead and select the default, which is yes. And I'll also use default for the profile. If we go ahead and do ls right now, we can see that we now have an Amplify directory in our project. What I want to do is I want to make sure that we add the auth category to our Amplify project. So let's do that now. I'll go ahead and select the default configuration. We're going to be using the username, so press enter. And I'm pretty much done. So now our app has pretty much been provisioned with the auth category. All we need to do is push that up to Amplify the backend so that everything is in sync. So let's run Amplify Push. As you can see, we have the auth category, which has been created. We're going to say yes. Once Amplify Push finishes, we can head on over to our project. We just need to make sure that we open up the workspace. So I'm going to go ahead and close my project that's in the background right now. And I'm going to make sure that I open up the workspace. Now that our app is open again, let's go ahead and make sure that we drag in the configuration files into our project. So I'll go ahead and open our projects folder, and I'll select the AWS configuration as well as the Amplify configuration JSON files and drag them right into my project. You're going to want to make sure that copy items if needed is unselected. Now what we need to do is we need to navigate back over to our app object and import Amplify and Amplify plugins. Now let's go ahead and create a function called configure Amplify, which is going to actually set up the plugins for us. In this case, we'll be adding the Auth plugin. Now we have our configure Amplify method, which is simply adding in the AWS Cognito Auth plugin into our Amplify and configuring it. As long as we're able to get this far, we know that Amplify has successfully been initialized and configured. Now, this function can be called either in the init method of our app object, which is what we're going to do since we're using the new SwiftUI app object, or you could call this function from inside of did finish launching with options if you're using an older UI kit project. So let's go ahead and add that in now. Now that we're calling configure Amplify, let's go ahead and run the project and make sure that everything is working as expected. All right, build succeeded. And as we can see, our app opens up to the sign up screen and we can see that Amplify configured right here. Perfect. So what we're going to actually start doing now is we're going to create a session manager, which is going to allow us to run a series of different calls all through Auth, and it's going to essentially manage the state of the app, whether we're going to be showing the sign up screen, the login screen, confirmation screen, or the session screen. And it's also going to hold all the calls that we do in order to sign up, confirm, or log in to the app. So let's go ahead and create a new object now. All right, so as you can see, we have this new session manager class, and it's going to conform to observable object because we're actually going to be observing a value called Auth State on this object. But first, in order to create that Auth State, we need to create a new enum that will represent the different types of states that we can be in. So let's go ahead and add that now. So as you can see, there's 4 different auth states that we could be in: sign up, log in, confirm a code, which requires a username, and a session, which will require a auth user. So what we need to do now is we need to add a state that we can observe on the session manager itself. And it also needs to be able to publish the values when it does change. So let's go ahead and add that now. Here's our auth state. And as you can see, by default, I'm going to set it to be login. Now what we want to do is we also want to see, is the user currently signed in or not, so that we can determine which state that we want to immediately put the user in. Or if they're logged in, then we want to put them in a session state. If they're not logged in, then we want to show them the login screen. So let's create a function that handles that logic right now. All right, perfect. As you can see, we have a new function called get current auth user, and we're simply checking if Amplify Auth has a current user. If it does, then we fall into this block and an auth user is passed into our session, and we know that we need to update our state to session. If not, then we know we need to show the user the login screen. Next, I want to add 2 more functions that will just simply make it so that I can show the sign up screen as well as show the login screen. All right, perfect. So now we can simply show the sign up screen or the login screen whenever we need to, as well as get the user state. So we're going to pause on this part of the session manager for now, and we're going to head back over to our authenticated app object, and we're going to actually start managing the state. Let's go ahead and create an instance of our session manager. We want to be sure that the session manager is an observed object so that we can find out whenever the auth state is changed. Down in the body, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we're going to show the different views that we have already set up based off of the current state. So let's go ahead and write a switch statement that will handle that. So as you can see, inside of our body and inside of the window group, we're just simply going to switch on the auth state of our session manager. If it's login, login view, sign up view, confirmation code, confirmation view, and session view. Now we currently have a warning right here on the session view since we're not using the user object. So what we'll do real quick before we continue is jump over to session view and let's make sure that we're able to pass in a auth user into this session view. Once we have the user property on the session view, we're going to get an error down here on this preview. So if we want to continue to be able to use previews, what we would need to do is we would need to create an object that conforms to auth user and pass it in right here. I'll create a dummy object real quick. All right, so as you can see, our warning went away. If we go back over to our app object and for our session case, what we could do now is we could pass the user into our session view. Let's go ahead and run that and make sure that everything is working as expected. So now we're showing the login view, which means that everything is working so far, so good. So let's keep going. So now keep in mind that we do have our session manager, but we need to pass it into each of these views that we want to use it. We're going to be using the session manager to log in, sign up, confirm the code that we get in our email, as well as log out. So we actually need to pass the session manager as an environment object to each of these views. Each view is now being passed the session manager. We just need to make sure that we can access it from each view as well. So let's go ahead, jump into the login view and make sure that we add an environment object that we can access. All right, so as you can see, it's as simple as setting it as an @environment object since it's already being passed in, and we just give it the same name, session manager, and it's of type session manager. Let's go ahead and add this to the other three views. So for sign up, we're going to do the same. Confirmation view and session view. Now that each of these views has the session manager inside as a property, what we need to do is we need to make sure that the session manager is able to handle each of the different requests that each view is going to perform. So for example, the signup view is going to need to call signup. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the session manager and add the signup method in here, handle all the logic, and we're going to make sure that we update the state when necessary. So let's go ahead and do that now. So as you can see, in our session manager, we have this sign up method where we're going to pass in a username, an email, and a password. The email needs to be passed as a user attribute, like so, and keep in mind that we need to pass an array of attributes. So I rep mine in braces so that it can be an array of user attributes. Next, what we need to do is we need to create sign up request options, and we just do that by passing in the attributes that we created from the line before. From there, we just simply call auth.signup, and we're going to pass in our username, our password, and then the options, which contains our email information. Now we get a result which is going to have one of two outcomes. Either it's going to be success or it's going to be failure, and we just simply handle those by updating the state accordingly. So as you can see, the success is giving us a sign up result while the failure is giving us an error. Right now we're just going to print the error. And for the sign up result, what we actually need to do is we need to check if there's a next step. Within the sign up result, we have a property called next step, and that will determine whether we're actually done or if we need to keep going and perform a different task. Now, if we're done, then we should simply sign in, but by default, you actually have to confirm your account before you can be a registered user. So in our app, since we used everything default, we won't actually be done at this step, and we know that we will actually have to confirm the user, but we'll add in the logic here anyways. So as you can see, now we're just simply switching off of the signup result that we received in the success case, and We know that we won't be done, but if we are, we will have finished sign up. And since we won't be done, we're going to actually have a confirm user with details that's going to be passed in. So if you need a little bit more information as to how you should proceed with this user that's attempting to sign in, you can get more information from the details. All we want to do is we want to make sure that we're going to switch our state to confirm code, and we're going to make sure that we pass in the username that was passed to the sign up method up here. So let's do that now. So all we're doing is we're updating the auth state to confirm code, and we're passing in the username. Now I'm wrapping it in a dispatch queue main async, which is going to bring the thread back to the main thread and make sure that we're not trying to manipulate state or any state that affects views from a background thread. We also added a capture list in here so that we can make sure that we have a weak reference to self so that there aren't any retain cycles. So before we actually go through and start testing out this sign up code, let's make sure that we also have the confirmation code set up so that we can confirm our username and our code and make sure that we update the state to show that we should be logging in. So as you can see, below the sign up method that we have in our session manager, we have a new confirm method, which is going to take in a username and a code. We're simply going to pass that username to amplify.auth.configureSignup for the username and the confirmation code. And then just like any other Amplify API, we're going to get back a result, which is going to come with a success and a failure. So if we get an error, we'll see that we pass in an error down here, and we're once again simply going to print it. And then if we have a success, we have this confirm result. Now the confirm result will once again say whether there's a next step or if the signup is complete. At this point, the signup will be complete, but we'll just make sure that we add an if statement to handle that just to make sure. All right, so we're checking if the signup is complete. As long as it is, we're gonna make sure that we once again return to the main thread, and we're gonna say show login. And I once again added this capture list right here so that we don't have retain cycles. So now this should handle our signup flow. We can head back over to the signup view and make sure that we call the correct methods whenever we need them. So as you can see, we have the signup button. So let's go ahead and call signup right here. All right, for the sign up button, as you can see inside the action, I'm just simply calling session manager.signup, passing in each of the respective properties. And I need to also update this button down here that says already having an account, log in. We want to be able to show the login screen. So let's go ahead and update this as well. All right, perfect. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for our confirmation view. So jumping back over to the confirmation view, we have an action right here on the button, on the confirm button. Let's go ahead and add in the respective call. All right, and in this action, we can see that we're calling session manager.confirm, passing in a username and the code. So let's go ahead and run it, and let's see if we get it to work. All right, we're all loaded up, and I just realized that this sign up button actually won't work because we didn't hook it up. So let's go back over to the login view and make sure that we have the sign up button working so that we can switch over to the sign up screen. So go to the login view. We're going to go to this area right here down where it says don't have an account, sign up. And we're going to just make sure that we call session manager.show sign up. All right, perfect. Let's run it again. All right, so we have our login screen. We hit show sign up. Bam. Now we can tell that this is the sign up screen because the sign up button as well as the 3 different fields. Let me go ahead and add in some information. All right, I hit sign up, and as you can see, it took us to the confirmation code screen, and we also have our username right there. And now I actually have my confirmation code, so I'll just go ahead and enter that in. And if I hit confirm, we should go to the login screen as long as that's correct. And we're back here at the login screen. Perfect. All right, so we were able to sign up and confirm our account. Now all we need to do is we just need to log in, and we're going to do the same thing that we did with sign up and confirmation that we're going to do with login. So as you can see, we have an action for our button in the login view, but we don't have a method that's attached to the session manager. So let's jump back over to the session manager and let's add that login method right now. All right, just like we did before, we're going to pass in the username and the password. And this time we're going to call auth.signin, and we're going to pass in the username and the password. That's all that's required. Once again, we get a result, which has two cases, success and failure. Failure will once again return an error, and the success will return a sign-in result. As long as this sign-in result says that we have successfully signed in, then we're good to go. So as you can see, in my success case, I'm going to make sure that I check if we are signed in. If the sign-in result returns is signed in, we're going to run this block of code. Once again, return to the main thread, and then we're going to call get current auth user. If you don't remember that one, that's the one where we're going to check the current user to make sure that we are able to get the auth user. And then what we'll do is we'll actually create a new session and we'll set that to the auth state. So before we run that, let's go ahead and head back over to the login view. And now we just need to call our new method. All right, so for the login button, our action is simply going to call the session manager.login, pass in our username and password, and we should be all set. Let's go ahead and try to sign in. And if I have signed in successfully, we should show the session screen. So let's go. And there it is. Boom, you signed in using Amplify. Oh, that's beautiful. So we still have a sign out button. Let's go ahead and make sure that we're utilizing that. Let's go back over to our session view. And what I'll do now, and let's also throw our name in here because we also want to see our beautiful name. Okay, so I just interpolated our username into this sentence just so that we can see it there. And then all we want to do is we want to make sure that we're able to sign out. So once again, we have our session manager. Let's jump back in, and towards the bottom, we'll just create a new method called sign out. All right, so as you can see, we added our sign out method, which is simply going to call auth.signout, and it simply has a closure. So once again, a result, success. If we get success, there's nothing that we need to be passed here. All we need to do is we need to just call get current auth user, which once again, since we're signed out, this get current user is actually going to return a nil. And that's going to set our state to log in. We just want to make sure that we're wrapping this in a dispatch queue, going back to the main thread, so that once again, we're on the main thread when we're doing UI updates. And then the failure, once again, just returning an error. And as I said before, we're going to just simply print out that error. Let's jump back over to our session view and let's make sure that we call that method in our sign out action. All right, and there we go. So let's go ahead and run this and let's see if we're able to sign out now. And we should also be able to see our username as well. Uh-oh, we're on the login screen. So that means that we're actually not being signed in, even though that we're currently signed in. So what we actually need to do is go back to the authenticated app, and we need to make sure that we're calling our get current user method to update our state. Because right now we're calling configure amplify, which is great. It's running all this, but we actually haven't done anything in our session manager to make sure that our state is current. So we need to call this method to make sure that our state is updated, so that if we do currently have a current user signed in, we're able to pass that in as a session and update our auth state right here. So let's go ahead and make sure that we call that method from the init. All right, let's run that again. And as you can see, now we're automatically signing in because we are updating that state. So as you can see, we have our username, mine was Kilo, and we signed in using Amplify, but let's see if we can sign out. We sign out and bam, Perfect. We go straight to the login screen. We're going to run it again, make sure that we're still signed out. We are. Let's go ahead and try to sign in one more time. All right, hit login and we're back in. So that is how you set up an auth flow. All right, and that's pretty much it. As you saw, we were very easily able to implement AWS Amplify Auth into our project. We covered signing up, confirming our account, signing in, and logging out. And if you have any other questions or you get stuck with anything that has to do with AWS or Amplify, make sure you reach out to us on our Discord. You can find the link in the description below. Now go out there and amplify your project.